somebody that wants to be a problem solver, if you walk into a heat treat shop, there are endless opportunities to solve problems, and at all levels. So
welcome to the Heat Treat podcast. I'm your host, Carlos Torres. And on this space, in this podcast, our mission is to deliver news and information about the heat treat industry by experts on the subject. We will be interviewing the power players on the industry, right? Today, we have our first guest, Mr. Jimmy Oaks. How's it going, Jim?
Very well. Thank you, Carlos. Thank you for having me.
Not a problem. So you've been noted like one of the most influential people on the heat treat industry by the Monty lately. You are president of the MTI, the Metal Treating Institute, right? You were just promoted some months ago to president of Super Systems Incorporated, one of the biggest technology companies on the heat treat industry, right? American-based. And you are a former president of the ASM Heat Treating Society. So you know something about heat treat, right?
Yeah, I do. I've spent some time around. Yes.
Right. Everybody knows Jimmy Oaks on the industry, right? So that's what we thought about having him as a guest. And really, what we want to do here is to bring the experts and talk about subjects, news, trends, products, processes. What's happening in the heat treat industry, and share it with the community, right? So if we have all these Zoom platforms and Teams and Skype, and we can easily be talking to the main guys, the power players, right? I believe a guy in Asia, or in the United States, or Latin America, can take a look at the videos and actually gain a lot of added value knowledge from the guys that actually know the stuff, right? So, Jimmy,
yeah,
how you been up these days with COVID? You know, everybody's actually locked up. What's your experience right now?
Well, yeah. First of all, I thank you for the introduction. It's quite an honor to have had an opportunity to serve for the Heat Treating Society, as well as MTI, and then be recognized by some of the publications out there. And I really enjoy the industry. I enjoy the people, and it's paid off dividends in regards to that. And so thank you for recognizing those. When it comes to COVID, so if we were talking 1 year ago today, and I had this conversation just recently, what a different conversation we would be having, because all we were talking about was the challenges that we were having with labor, trying to find people across the board, especially in heat treat and manufacturing, I should say. So. And in technology. So, fast forward 3 months, and COVID has become real for every company. So, obviously, lots of headwinds when it comes to the business climate and the things that the unknowns that we had in front of us. The good news right now is I feel like there's some stability out there. So, but what has changed and how have we handled it? Well, immediately for us, it was creating a safe working space based on the information that we had. So we spread people out. We had people working from home. We have a couple different buildings here, and we can operate pretty spread out. And we do have some people whose work can be remote. And then we have other people that are doing install work. So they were still traveling around. Going into some of the hotter spots when it came to COVID. So that's and of course you're challenged with some places wouldn't let you in, which is understandable, trying to keep their people safe. So in general, COVID has just changed the dynamics of the way you do business. But at the end of the day, we still have to make product. We still have to support our customers. And we can support people remotely. So we've done it. We've done that before COVID. We continue to do that today, maybe a little bit more than we have before. Certainly, some of our workforce working remotely. So we've enabled that some, and then just make people aware of the situation and trying to keep everyone safe.
It is, let's take the best from this situation. That's why we actually decided to make a podcast, since everybody's locked down, but we do have actually time right now instead of being on the road, right? So why not just have a nice conversation with the experts on the subject, right?
Yeah.
So what we want to do here, Jim, and I believe you and I briefly talked about it, is like we want to have a space to talk about heat treating stuff. Right? Every time you talk to a heat treater, everybody's very passionate about the industry, transformation, processes, machinery, trends, but we cannot talk that on let's say on a Christmas dinner with the family, right? Nobody will get it, or with or with a friend or with a relative, right? So this is the space for us to talk about what we like to discuss on shows, right? Unfortunately, there has not been any shows lately. There was the virtual show, but we always kind of miss like the interaction, right? So, and in order to bring some value here, I know you're a great expert on what when it comes to CQI-9, NADCap, and all other norms about heat treating, right? So let's imagine if a guy was just promoted, let's say on GM or Ford or you name it, from the machining shop area, and they'll go, you're going to end up on the heat treat area, right? Starting Monday, right? There's something called CQI-9, right?
Yep.
How would you describe CQI-9 on a nutshell, on a friendly user way, so he can actually know what to do? And what are the most common misconceptions about CQI-9? Right?
Sure. Well, I wanted just to, before I go there, you were mentioned when you start talking about heat treat and what that means to people. Just yesterday, standing in a parking lot, somebody was asking me, what the company that I work for, what do we do? And, we're standing there and there's two cars parked, right? One, and you look at the brake rotors. So just using the example of, well, what is heat treating and what is thermal processing? I gave the example of the newer brake rotor that did not have any rust on it, and the one that did, the older one that did have rust. Obviously, with the FNC process that's readily used today, it was a perfect opportunity to explain, well, what our customers do. What do we do? Obviously, industrial automation. You can kind of talk about technology a little bit there, but it's great to put things in perspective. So that's a great opportunity for your next Christmas dinner, I guess, for the right.
We'll do. We'll take it into consideration.
Although I think everybody in your Christmas table probably understands the heat treating.
When they ask me what do I do for a living, I know that I got 30 seconds, right? As soon as you start saying, austenites and martensite and you name it, they go like, did somebody watch the game yesterday or something, right? So yeah, and my wife, she sells shoes, right? Lady shoes, right? So whenever we're on a plane or something and we're talking to strangers, right? They go like, "What do you do for a living?" Right? Whenever I start selling, we heat treat steel and properties and microstructure, and she goes like, I sell the fashionable shoes. I just lose the audience, and I believe most of the people actually do, right? Because our stuff is so technical, right? That you have to be very specific on how you talked about it to the general audience, right? And that's what we want to do here, right, Jim?
Yes, for sure.
So going back to your question.
Back to your question, yes.
Going back to your question, how would you explain CQI-9 to a rookie?
Yeah,
right?
So I tell you what, CQI-9 to me is a really good best practices document for the processes in heat treating. So when I look at that document, when it first came out, obviously it's criteria that's used to audit against to make sure that that companies in the supply chain for the automotive industry are using the best practices that are seen by the automotive industry, and they wanted consistency. So, if you take it, it's the boundaries. If you say you're going to do something, you say you're going to heat treat it, they create the boundaries of how you're going to do it. They create the rules, if you will.
The rules of engagement.
Yeah. So that if you're going to do this, then you have to do this, and this, to achieve that. So I really explain it as the best practices. If you're going to do a carburizing process, a temper process, nitriding, whatever it is, that document will tell you how you're supposed to check the atmosphere, how the atmosphere is supposed to be controlled, the temperature is supposed to be controlled, what the boundaries of the temperature should be from a uniformity standpoint, how frequent you should be checking your charts, data logging, how you should use material handling in the plant for the parts. So
and I believe this is a common misconception, because whenever somebody buys like a new instrument or a furnace, they go like, "Hey, I want the furnace to comply with CQI-9 or the instrument to comply with CQI-9," and I go like, "Dude, you are the one that needs to comply with CQI-9, not the equipment itself." I believe that's the most common misconception.
Right, and you raise a great point, and so when I have this conversation a lot, because they create guidelines, and it's the heat treater's responsibility to have a control plan. Okay, so a control plan is basically, these are your plans of how you're going to heat treat something. They should comply with CQI-9, but what you need to do is identify what happens when you're out of compliance and how do you address that. Like that's what they really want to know. When something falls out, you really have to have in there, okay, well, if this, then we do this, this, and that's a control plan. It's just like what you said. It's, you're not buying a furnace that is CQI-9 compliant. You're buying a furnace with uniformity this and atmosphere this and et cetera, et cetera. But you need to create a control plan that matches up with CQI-9.
And just to add to what you're saying, CQI-9 was placed there in order to be able to trace a part many years when if something goes wrong, right? Kind of a recall, right? So traceability is like the main reason why CQ9 is there, right?
Well, I would argue that the main reason is for an escape. So if you have a part that doesn't get heat treated properly, you're catching it because you're checking this and you're doing this and you're doing this. So it's making sure it actually doesn't leave. But in the event that it does, you still have that complete traceability, right? So what they want to do is always—
Got it.
It's kind of like a preemptive plan.
Yeah, because one of the biggest risks of heat treating is for a part to go out of the building without being heat treated, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what basically you're saying is that the result of implementing a nice CQI-9 will be to avoid any part to leave the building without being heat treated and being heat treated on a correctly way.
That's right. So it's
right.
Proper. Yes.
So there you have it, rookie heat treat engineer, right? So that's CQI-9 coming from Jimmy Oakes, and this guy really knows what he's talking about. And now, Jim, let's say that this engineer, has now 5 years of experience, right? Mm-hmm. And suddenly he gets hired by Boeing or an aerospace company, right? To the same heat treat department, but instead now of being taking care of CQI-9, he has now another animal to deal with, which is called, I believe, Nadcap. Will that be accurate to say?
Yeah. So So the aerospace industry would be. So it's the Nadcap is an accreditation that you achieve for not just heat treatment. There's a number of different.
Yeah, right.
But specifically for this gentleman that got through the automotive side of things and now is venturing into aerospace.
So he has heat treat experience.
Yep. Yeah.
On automotive traceability, let's say.
Yep.
Right. But now he jumps to the same application, different industry.
Yeah.
Right.
So the first thing that he's gonna have to familiarize himself with is the AMS specifications that you would be running those parts to. So there's a number of specs for carburizing or nitriding. So you would have to make sure that you're meeting those requirements. So a customer is going to send a part to a heat treater, or they're going to be making a part if it's a captive shop, and they have to. They're basically complying with 2759. /3 or /6 or whatever this slash sheet is for the process that they do. So that person would be would be really required to familiarize himself with those processes. And those are basically the steps to go through that heat treatment process. It's definitely a different document than CQI-9, but these are the steps that you'd have to go through. And it might call out some things for validation of atmosphere or checking microstructures or, validating hardness or what have you. But that would be the first thing, and then the second would really be all the other aspects of a NADCAP audit process from a heat treater. So just to be familiar with the pyrometry requirements and any of the other NADCAP auditor checklists that would be applicable for that particular heat treater. So yeah, that way become familiar with it. So you make sure you're doing the right thing and quality's happy, the end customer's happy, everybody's happy.
Right. And I believe there was something about treating flight critical components against non-critical components. Do you know something about that? If are they measured the same way or traceable the same way? Because I believe there's some level of accreditations when you can actually heat treat, how do you call it, critical flight components,
right.
Like turbines and there's some others that don't require as much accreditation.
Yeah, and I don't have enough details around that.
Right.
But I do believe you're right, because some people that do aerospace parts don't have NADCAP accreditation.
Right.
And I think that might be what kind of what you're referencing there. But again, I'm not the expert on that in that realm.
Come on, Jim. We brought you because you were the expert, right? Right. No, I mean, you've been to many heat treat shops, right? Captive and commercials.
Yes.
And you have met many people on the industry, suppliers, heat treaters, I don't know, corporate buyers, you name it. Mm-hmm. But you have also traveled across the globe, because I know you have different offices in different countries, right?
Yes.
Asia, India, China, Mexico, you name it, right? So what are the trends that you actually see on the markets right now? How's America, the trends that you're seeing in the American market against Asia, India, Mexico, right? What are you seeing nowadays, right? What are the trends?
Okay, well, my view is that, well, let's take Mexico, manufacturing in Mexico, heat treating in Mexico. I really look at that as an extension to the supply chain in the United States.
Yeah, it's NAFTA, or how you call it, NAFTA 2.0 now with the new treaty.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
And it's critical to the infrastructure of the consumers here in the U.S. because there's so much capacity for manufacturing in Mexico. So, and if you look at, I remember being at an AHIA conference, and they had a gentleman from Mexico that talked about the percentage of each car that's sold in the United States that's actually made in Mexico. And it's there's all kinds of different parts and pieces that come through manufacturing in Mexico. So, but with that said, there's also a tremendous amount of growth in Mexico for South Korea automotive manufacturers, Japanese, European. So there's just lots of growth in general. So that market is solid. And I can't put my finger on it, but I feel like some of the processing of what I would say hard goods that went to China initially ended up back in Mexico or in Mexico
Mm-hmm.
because of the logistics and the supply chain related.
Logistics, supply chain, also language barrier, it's huge, right? And
enormous.
It is, right? And now that everybody's actually working from home,
yes.
I've been talking to different leaders in the industry or CEOs. Everybody kind of feels that things got slower, right? Because people take much time to respond to emails, to answer calls, to be on meetings, right? So the supply chain actually slowed down, right, on speed. And when you actually cut that logistics and you bring into a closed geographical zone, you increase that speed because you actually decrease the logistics, right?
Yep.
So do you believe the geographical spots will be autosufficient? Let's say that cars for United States will be made on that region, and cars for Europe will be made on that region, and lesser and lesser parts will be actually imported from China or from Europe to be assembled in Mexico or to the US to serve that market. Well, what are your
Well,
thoughts? You know,
yeah,
and not only cars. Let's talk about, let's say, caterpillars, right?
yeah.
They have a bunch of stuff that is being made in Japan or in China, or you name it. But whenever you have to deliver the final product, everything has to be assembled, right? So
Yes.
they want to cut logistics because there are fewer planes, there are fewer travels. Nobody wants to be on the road or taking a plane nowadays. So what do you think about it?
Well, I mean, just if you look at China, one thing I wanted to make a point in China is, that economy, although has slowed in its growth, still has so much upside because of the amount of people there.
It's a monster.
It is a monster. So if you look at just China in itself, you're going to be creating product there to stay there. Whether it's the Deere tractor or the Caterpillar equipment or the Mercedes-Benz or whatever it is, they're not making that necessarily to bring it somewhere else, because their middle class is growing, and now they're going to be consumers in their economy. So I think that's what you're going to see there. So the stuff that's going there is going to stay there and serve that market.
So I guess the question is, do you think China is self-sufficient for his own market?
I think it's probably getting there. I think that, just like, I think
that's a tough one. Sorry to put you on the spot.
We're a global economy. So
right.
You look at, you could make the argument that the United States could be self-sufficient, but you know what? We source things from all over the world.
That's right. And that's my point. We didn't expect on a globalized economy that we were going to be dealing with all this COVID trending that is happening nowadays. So the supply chain actually changed, right? It evolved, right? So we have a lot of restrictions right now to get cheaper parts from all over the world, right? So I believe we have to get used to it and see how it goes. But I don't see this slowing down, but especially on heat treat, it's very geographically, right? It's a geographic business model, right? Because you cannot outsource heat treat from very, very, very far, because parts have to be made in and out. So are you seeing, and I'm talking now in the US, are captives thinking about bringing stuff in-house, or maybe they don't have the talent or the people that they used to have, and they are outsourcing it? I mean, what are you seeing?
Well, I think it's very cyclical. So I think that, and there's a couple ways to answer. I mean, I definitely have seen some captives bring in some heat treat. There's no doubt about it. And then I've seen some that have decided to outsource. It's a huge capital expenditure. And in some cases, if you look at a carburizing process where you have, an oil quench, I mean, it's dirty. But there's other cleaner processes. You look at what Ipsen has done with the Titan. There's a lot of these small aerospace manufacturers and maybe even medical device companies that have decided to bring their small amounts of heat treating in, because they package the solution. So and that expertise, you struggle with it. So I really believe it's a very cyclical process, and I think this has been happening for years. Look at the used equipment market.
I totally get it, but I think it has to do if you bring in-house heat treating against, if you outsource it, if you have first the capacity already, the equipment, plus the talent, the people who can actually make that happen. I do believe that it's very difficult to find great talent nowadays, right? Of course there is, right? But if every single OEM would like to buy their own furnaces, there'll be a lack of metallurgical engineers, right?
Absolutely.
right? So I believe the commercial shop, it's a nice business model because you can have a guy that knows a lot about heat treating, right? Different processes, different microstructure, right? You can know a little about carburizing, a little about vacuum tempering, I don't know, aluminum, right? Water quenching, right? But if an aerospace company will buy its tiny furnace, they will need a guide to understand heat treating, Nadcap, all what we were just talking about, and that's very difficult to keep nowadays. Talent is something that it's being difficult to find nowadays, and to keep it.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, in one of the challenges here in the United States, I think, Carlos, is that it's an aging group,
It is.
especially in heat treats specifically. So you have a lot of really, really good heat treaters that have just their domain knowledge. They just get it, I call
Because
them.
they have years of experience.
Yeah.
They've been on the shop for 30 years.
That's right. Yep. And they teach the metallurgical engineers and mechanical and electrical engineers all these things, maybe they've just been a heat treater all their lives, and they the value that they have is just it's off the charts. So.
Yeah, and that's, I believe that's one of the big challenges. Even the cliche that a metallurgical engineer it's an old guy sitting in the corner of a lab. I have met many guys that have a lot of talent. They're pretty young. They're looking for an opportunity on this industry, right? But the thing is that, as I told you at the beginning of the interview, I believe we're in a very interesting industry, Jim. People are very passionate when we actually talked about it, right? The guys that actually know. But right now, heat treating is fighting for talent with the new fancy companies like the startups. Everybody wants to be an entrepreneur right now, right? Everybody wants to work for Facebook, Amazon, you name it. How can we make our industry more attractive to the new talent? I mean, because it is a very technical, passionate, interesting industry, right? We see a lot of science. Sometimes we actually have to know about rocket science, right? Because the parts actually go on rockets, right? So it's high tech, right? How do we compete against the startups, the fintechs? What do we have to do? And you being now president of MTI, I believe you should have like an opinion on that.
Well, between both MTI and the Heat Treating Society, a topic of is always engaging younger professionals.
Yes.
And it's so important. So, and really, it's finding somebody that wants to be a problem solver. And it could be, it can be an engineer, it can be somebody that's come out of the trades, it can just be somebody that has a high school education. Somebody that wants to be a problem solver. If you walk into a heat treat shop, there are endless opportunities to solve problems, and at all levels. So it's just to get people to understand that you have an opportunity to solve a different problem every single day. And if people like a challenge and they want to stay engaged in a job, the heat treat, captive or commercial, creates that opportunity. And again, I really believe it's at high school education, trade school education, or even in engineering. All three of those are opportunities. So it's just like I said, we're talking about the just the example with the rotor on the car. I mean, most people don't know what this is. If you material science, most people are thinking about the next plastic or the polymer. It's not necessarily that what you can do with a piece of metal that might end up in space.
It is, and when we were on the major lockdown on May, and everything shut down except the essential industry. The first industry that everybody said, this is not shutting down, is the steel industry, right?
Yeah.
I believe this shows how important this industry is, right? So I believe we have to do a better job promoting how interesting our industry is, right? Because
Yes.
everybody right now on social media, they're hearing guys like Elon Musk, going like, "Oh, come work for Tesla or SpaceX. It's super sexy. You don't need a degree or something." So that guy has done an amazing job promoting their industry. I don't know if Elon Musk has a heat treat department of his companies. That'll be fun to know. Do you know if Tesla has a heat treat department?
I do not.
SpaceX?
I definitely know SpaceX has equipment.
They should have some heat treat in there.
They definitely have heat treatment.
Right. Yeah. So maybe we have to interview one of those guys next, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so yeah, it's so basically there's right now a fight for talent. I believe we can do a better job promoting how the new talent, the new professionals can actually become the new heat treaters, and inside of thinking about the old heat treat guy on the lab. Which they're very bright people, right?
Yeah, and MTI actually has a video for educating people on what the heat treatment industry is and why it is a.
I seen the videos.
Yeah, it's good. It's good.
Whenever you think about heat treating formation, you think about thick books, right? Very valuable books.
Yep.
But a kid, he will go into Google. Kids do not pick technical books anymore. They'll go into Google or YouTube, and that's what we're trying to do, right? So if somebody actually Google CQI-9, our mission is actually to have a link to this video over there, right? So this is the way new generations are going to learn, either we like it or not, right? So we cannot expect the kids to go to the library and look for a book when they can just type it on her cell phone, right? So that's what we're firing against, right?
Yeah, small bits of information is what they'll consume.
Yeah, I believe they need like the first push. This industry is interesting, right? Go and see if you like it, and if so, there is a bunch of information out there, right? It is. Jim, if you were to give an advice to this rookie heat treat engineer that you have learned through your career, things that they didn't teach you in school, it can be about business, it can be about heat treating, it can be I don't know, like a personal advice. What will you tell this guy?
I think I would start by networking. There's a tremendous amount of resources, like you said, in books and online, but having a resource that you can talk to, having an individual that's an engineer or an individual that's in the heat treat process, where, I go to a NADCAP meeting or meet with people on the CQI advisory team. Having those resources is so valuable. And, I've been very fortunate, partly because of the role. I get out and I see a lot of different places and have a chance to meet a lot of people. But I would encourage everybody, especially just getting into the industry, to find that opportunity to get out and to network, go to an ASM chapter meeting, and meet they're attended by, some young people, some old people, engage with them, and might find something in common as far as a challenge that you have on your shop. So that would be the first thing.
Right now it's a little difficult without shows or conventions. But you actually gave this advice to me many years ago, and I actually follow it, right?
Yeah.
And I believe I connected now, but you have to be constantly out there meeting people, talking to strangers, right? Basically, but the stranger will know about the subject you want to talk about, right? And they have similar problems, they have similar vendors, challenges, customers, you name it, right? But I believe it's a great advice, on every industry, right?
Well, and I tell you, nothing's more rewarding when somebody calls you and asks you for assistance in something. It's great to be able to reach out to get help, but when somebody actually calls you for something, it's very rewarding, because they trust in you, there's something knowledgeable that you can provide to them, it's it's a win-win. So
It is. It is.
yeah.
Well, this is Jimmy Oakes, one of the most influential people on heat treating. Thank you, Jim, for being on the show.
Yeah.
And hopefully, it's not the last time we actually talk. We have so much to talk about. Thanks for being here. Something else that you would like to tell the audience, the heat treating audience?
No, I just, I certainly appreciate that, the opportunity. I've been very fortunate to have a great team here, at SSI with our guys on Steven's leadership, and a great group at every level. The offices that we have around the world supporting our products, and great partners and stuff. So Carlos, I just appreciate the opportunity to sit here and have a chat with you today. So thank you.
No, my pleasure, Jim. This is fantastic. So I just want to tell to everybody that we will be uploading a weekly show, a weekly interview with the power players of the industry. You will be able to watch this on LinkedIn mainly, Spotify, Facebook, on YouTube. It's under the Heat Treat channel. Thank you, Jim, and everybody on the audience. Be safe and see you next week. Keep heat treating stuff.